for getting both feet down, falling backwards reception. I was completely blown away, and I am sold on the fact that he is just the freakiest athlete in the NFL right now.
And for the Browns, Brian Hoyer having to put up the ball 50 times. I'm sorry, Brian Hoyer's a nice story, but you're not going to win with him throwing the ball 50 times.
Do you know that one of the biggest fantasy stories out of that game was I'm going to call it alleged, even though some of this, but that Isaiah Crowell has now become sort of the lead running back for the Browns. And I sit there and I scratch my head and I go, what did he do in the game? Yeah. And he didn't do much. It was fantasy relevant, I suppose, but next week it could be Ben Tate for all we know.
But he had 14 carries for 61 yards, but he also had a 35-yard rush. So minus that, it's 13 carries for 26 yards.
Yeah. I just don't get it. I will say, I'm looking forward to the Browns getting back Josh Gordon next week.
Yeah.
As am I. You know why, Jim?
Because we both have him on some of our fantasy teams.
I stashed him on my bench.
Oh, my God.
But, Steve, I was stunned, too. And Keith, I was stunned, too. I mean, this was one of the games I thought, this is a gimme for the Browns. They're going to show up and go up against a rookie, and they should just tear him apart. And they didn't.
At home, too. I mean,
at home. Yeah.
Really disturbing.
Yeah, I just, who knows what the heck happened. Certainly the offense didn't show up, and the Texans defense did. I mean, they held them to 7 points, and he threw the ball for, 300-some yards. So, you got to tip your hat to the Texans in that defense.
And the Atlanta Falcons outlast the Carolina Panthers. Carolina throwing on 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to try to come back. For the Falcons, Matt Ryan, 31 of 45 for 268 and a touchdown. Steven Jackson, 17 carries for 41 yards. Blah, 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 blah. Cam Newton, 23 of 37 for 292, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Jonathan Stewart, my fantasy nemesis, 7 carries for 24. D'Angelo Williams, 10 carries for 41 yards. Kelvin Benjamin, another strong outing, 9 catches for 109 yards and a touchdown. I brought it up. I mentioned it before when we talked about the Falcons' remaining schedule. Are we all in agreement that Mike Smith's probably fired after this?
No. I think he has enough respect and love from the ownership that it could be a similar situation to what's going on in Cincinnati.
In Cincinnati, because Marvin Lewis gets leash after.
Well, Marvin Lewis has had success and he's had a lot of failure, but he's had enough success, and he's well liked enough and respected enough by the ownership that he's been able to hang around in a lot of scenarios that most coaches would have lost their job, and I think Smith is the same way.
I would tend to agree. I think Arthur Blank really likes Mike Smith, and as long as they're in the hunt for the playoffs, as long as there's some excitement built around the ball club, I think he'll be willing to look past this, and sort of just look ahead to next season. It'll be interesting to see now that Antone Smith's gone for the season with a broken leg, who the next running back is that steps up, because it should be Devonta Freeman. And in fact, now that I'm mentioning it to you guys, I should write a little something about him in my waiver wire article, which for all the listeners out there, fantasygreek.com, it'll be up this evening. Devonta Freeman should get an opportunity here to get some increased touches and hopefully, I've been waiting for him to supplant Steven Jackson. I'm sort of tired of Steven Jackson being the lead back when they have these other talented running backs on the team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Antone Smith, what a mistake that was not to get him more touches.
Right. It comes down to, I think Steven Jackson still has a little bit of that name, and you keep hoping he can break out, but he just isn't. You know what I mean? And for whatever reason, they're reluctant to pass that torch for whatever reason.
Yeah, he's just lacks some of that burst, especially getting to the outside. He's getting tripped up and tackled, before he can get to that second level, and that's something that he just excelled at when he was with the Rams.
All right, we are running out of time before we got to go to break, so real quick hitters around the rest of the games that stand out. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers beat the Washington Redskins 27-7. Should the Redskins be done with RG3? I know what Steve's answer is going to be.
I think yes for a couple of reasons. One, I in watching that game, I agree with every commentator that I heard. It just doesn't seem like he can read a defense. He just seems lost out there. I know he's playing under a new system and he's coming off injuries and he hasn't played a lot, but I've not been a believer in him from day one. And also, if they get rid of him after this season, because it's going into his fifth-year option, they will save a boatload of money. And I think that might be what it comes down to, is if he has 6 more games left, if he does not improve and still plays the way that he's been playing, turn the ball over, making poor decisions, I think they're going to get rid of him just because it will save them a lot of money.
I think a big story that as it relates to the Redskins is this: out of the 3 quarterbacks that they haven't found the answer through any one of them, and that's not a good thing for your franchise going forward, because one of them needs to be that quarterback. Otherwise, you're back to the drawing board next season, and you're looking for another quarterback in the draft. And I just, boy, for everything that the Redskins gave up to get Robert Griffin III, that would just be waving the white flag, and certainly it makes that decision just a terrible one. I think you've got to give him the shot because of that reason, especially if you don't see anything special out of Kirk Cousins. He has imploded when the pressure has been too big. And Colt McCoy, while the one game that he did play in, they won, I mean, we didn't really see anything special out of that position. If they want to give it another shot, by all means, go right ahead. But I just think you shouldn't. You need to commit to somebody, and at least for this season, make it Robert Griffin III. If he sort of digs his own ditch, then he has.
All right, the San Francisco 49ers edge the Giants 16-10. Eli Manning with 5 interceptions. Are we witnessing the downfall of Eli Manning?
When haven't we been witnessing the downfall of Eli Manning?
I know. A guy throws 5 interceptions, I got to ask the question.
Well, I'll answer it. I mean, yes, and we have been witnessing for a while. First of all, he's always been Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde when it comes to his quarterback performances. It's either really good or really bad. It never really seems to be in between, or if it isn't in between, it's just not enough to notice. And he's not an elite quarterback. Let's get back to that discussion. Back then, I said he was an elite quarterback, and he had people defending him saying, "Oh, he's an elite quarterback. Look, they won a couple of Super Bowls. They didn't win it because of Eli Manning. They won it despite Eli Manning."
Ooh.
I'm going to disagree on that, because in those postseasons where they won the Super Bowls, he played like an elite quarterback. He played better than he is. Because he actually got them in a couple of those seasons. He was one of the catalysts that got them to the postseason. But I do believe that was more of like what I like to call the Mark Rippon syndrome, to where you have an average quarterback that has delusions of grandeur and actually plays really well for little spurts. But luckily for him, he had a great enough defense and supporting cast that playing really well for little spurts was enough to get to the Super Bowl and win a couple of them. But now that the defense is waning and he's got injuries and doesn't have Victor Cruz, even though Ruben Rando has been playing well, he's just toilet bowling it.
Here's the thing. When it comes to elite quarterbacks, and this is all I really want to say about it, is you have to be able to look at him and say, you're the guy I want to go with. And I look at him and I say, you're not the guy I want to go with.
No.
He's not Drew Brees. He's not Tom Brady. He's not Andrew Luck. He's not Peyton. He's not a lot of guys. And that's why I just don't think he's an elite quarterback.
Yeah.
All right, the Seattle Seahawks lose to the Kansas City Chiefs 24-20. The two teams combined for just about 400 yards rushing, which is fantastic for an old school guy like me. I'm looking at the stats. I don't understand how Kansas City won this game. They only held the ball for 24 minutes. Alex Smith only threw for 108 yards. But it comes down to who puts the ball in the end zone. Jamal Charles with a couple of runs, Nile Davis with a 4-yard rush, 4-yard. It's scoring touchdowns versus kicking field goals. It's just kind of a nice, solid win. And if we had question marks about the Kansas City Chiefs, have we answered them, or are we still kind of weary about them?
I'm worried about them. I'm worried about any semblance of a passing game. I'm not worried of their defense so much because I think they proved a lot, especially this weekend. I mean, Seattle should have won this game. And yet the Chiefs held them twice, as they marched down the field, stopped them on 4th down, turning the ball over to the Chiefs. And that to me proved a lot of how much heart they have and how much talent they have. And they stood right in the face of Russell Wilson and what is a pretty fierce rushing attack and a decent passing game and stopped them. But on offense, outside of Jamal Charles or Nile Davis, they strike me as a one-trick pony. And if they're going to just wait until the playoffs to bring out their passing game like they did last year against the Colts, I think that's doing a disservice to their team, getting that kind of experience in game situations.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm weary about them too. And unfortunately, they're not. I think they need to have that one big game to really prove themselves to me. And unfortunately, it doesn't happen for 2 weeks because next week, I should say this week, they're playing the Raiders on Thursday night, which they should easily win. Well, not necessarily easily win, but I see them winning that game. I think it's next week or the week after when they're playing the Broncos on Sunday Night Football in Kansas City. I think that's a huge game that really will show what kind of team they are.
All right, and 2 more games really quick. The Arizona Cardinals beating the Detroit Lions 14-6. Bruce Arians has said that he feels the Cardinals can win the Super Bowl with Drew Stanton as quarterback. The Lions' defense is no joke, even though this game was on the road. What do you think the chances are of the Cardinals winning the NFC still?
At this point, very good.
I mean, they're going to have to up their game because I think the Packers have done a lot to suddenly improve their lot. I mean, you could sit there and talk about Aaron Rodgers all you want as a 3 to 4 touchdown quarterback, but when you have a defense that can be a suffocating and throw a team out of its rhythm like the Eagles, I mean, that's something else. So I want to give props to the Cardinals because they deserve it. No one's really talking about them, or at least not until now, or giving them the props or the respect that they deserve. But that Packers team, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be a test for the ages. Matthew Stafford held to 18 of 30 for 183 yards and a pick. No touchdown passes for Matthew Stafford. Drew Stanton, on the other hand, against the Detroit defense, 21 of 32 for 306, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, but a real defensive struggle there. And the last game I want to talk about before we take a quick break and then preview next week is the Patriots beating the Colts 42-20. Since the Patriots got blown out by the Chiefs, they have been playing lights-out football, and are they the team in the AFC?
Yes.
I would say so too. They're the most well-rounded team.
It's just playing absolute lights-out ball, and I was the one that I didn't think the Patriots had a chance of figuring it out, but you know what? They are playing the best football in probably the league right now. Them and, like we said during the break, them in Green Bay.
And how about that Jonas Gray doing his best Jamal Lewis imitation? Let me tell you.
Yeah, for the guy that or despite the guy with the microphone that had Shane Vereen in his lineup. Just saying.
And I think Gronk is putting up potential MVP numbers this year. He is playing so well. He is proving that team needs him.
Tight ends don't win the MVP.
And he was my number 1 rated tight end to enter the year.
He's playing unbelievable.
He is. He is unbelievable. He's the best.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a short break. When we come back, we will preview Week 12, and we'll tally up our picks and our updated standings. You're listening to 87 Sports Fans Live on Late Night Sports Radio.